All right, everyone. So today I wanted to share with you guys some really awesome information, and this has to do with defense and damage reduction, and more specifically, the amount of damage reduction that you're going to get based on the amount of defense that you have. And let me show you guys the original post here. Now, this was posted by Road, so thank you very much, of course, to Road for putting this information out there to the Raid Shadow Legends community. Big shout out, credit where credit is due, and if you guys are interested in taking a look at this in a bit more detail on your own, I will leave a link in the description of the video as well as in the comment section pinned at the top. But I'm going to also do my best to really explain this as well as I can, kind of break down the important stuff to take away from this. And don't worry, I know there's a formula in there. You don't have to know any kind of math or any crazy stuff like that. I'm going to do my best to break this down for you guys as best as I can as well. And the great news as well is Road also provided this awesome chart here that actually shows exactly what that formula is. And what this is the amount of damage reduction that you get and the amount of damage that you're taking based off of the amount of defense that you have. So you can see at the very top of the graph, that is the original amount of damage, and then as you increase your defense, of course, the amount of damage that you take is going to go down, and there's some super important takeaways from this. Now, one of them, of course, is what is kind of going to be the optimal point of defense to have. What's something that you probably want to aim for, especially on defense-based champions, where not only are they going to, obviously take less damage, but they're also going to inflict more damage because their skills scale off of defense as well. So that's one thing. Now, the other thing is really interesting, and if you look at the right side of the chart, you'll see that little number 15 in the kind of bottom third of the right side, and that is because, very similar to the video that I made a month or so ago about accuracy and resistance, these numbers, they don't go towards 0. They are approaching 15, and that is because the maximum amount of damage reduction that you can actually get from defense. Now, very important, because there are other ways to get damage reduction, and I'll get more into that in a second, but specifically from defense, you can get up to 85% damage reduction, which means no matter how much defense you have and how much of it you put on your gear, or even if you get some crazy number like 10, 20,000, you will still have to take 15% of the original amount of damage, which is what that little number 15 is. Okay, so now let's take a look at what's kind of going to be that optimal point of defense to really try to go for. And I've honestly tried recording this part so many times because every time that I explain this, it seems complicated. So I'm just going to do my best to say this as simple as I possibly can. Because once you get to 4,240 defense, you're really getting to that point on the graph where you can see the line. It's really starting to get pretty close to just being a horizontal line. Adding a whole bunch and stacking a ton of defense past that point, it is still giving you damage reduction, but the diminishing returns at that point really make it worth looking at other ways to get survivability, things like HP or other ways to get damage reduction. Remember, this is all damage reduction just based off of your defense. There are still other ways to get other forms of damage reduction, so it just doesn't really seem to be worth it at that point. And remember as well, there are other things in the game like the increased defense buff, which are going to give you a major boost to your defense as well, and those also lose efficiency as you get way past the point of 4,000 to 4,200 defense. But then on the other side of the scale, you can see that below 4,200, you really kind of start to get to that point now where the line, instead of getting close to being horizontal, it's really starting to get vertical. And now, just a few points of less defense, you're really starting to take a whole lot of additional damage. It's very unlikely, though, that you're ever really going to see champions be in a situation where they don't have any kind of defense at all. I mean, even if they're not a defense-based champion and they don't have any defense gear, they're still going to have some sort of defense on them. So you have to be a little bit careful looking at these numbers. There's the original amount of damage, right? That's if you had absolutely no defense at all, but that's also a number that you're probably not going to really see ever because you're always going to have some sort of defense. So when you do compare these numbers, my suggestion to you guys is don't really compare the numbers too much to the original amount of damage that you would take if you had no defense. Kind of compare the numbers that you're looking at simply with just those numbers. So if I were to compare 4,240 defense to 3,210 defense, you see the little numbers next to it, 20 and 25%. That's the percentage from the original damage, but we're never really going to see the original damage happen all that often. So I really just want to compare the damage that I take at 4,240 defense and the damage that I take at 3,210 defense. So if I take 1,000 damage at 4,240 defense, I'm going to take 1,250 damage at 3,210 defense. So dropping my defense by 1,000 points is going to increase my damage by 25%. On the other side of the scale, though, you can see that adding 1,000 points of defense is only actually going to drop my damage from 1,000 only down to, about 880 or so. So it's only about a 10 to 12% damage reduction by adding 1,000 defense, whereas I'm taking an additional 25% damage if I drop my defense by 1,000. And you can go even before that, because once you get before or below 3,200 defense, that's when the numbers really start to ramp up a lot. Like you can see, dropping an additional 1,000 defense before 3,200, you get really close to that 2,170 number right there. And now, if I take 1,000 damage at 3,210 defense, now I'm going to take something crazy like 1,400 damage at 2,170 defense. So you need to be careful. Like once you drop below 4,000, 3,000 defense, the damage numbers really start to ramp up, and that's kind of approaching the territory that you'll probably see in a lot of, offense attack-based champions that don't have a lot, where they're going to be getting one shot randomly, or they're just not going to have a lot of survivability. So honestly, knowing the absolute exact details of how this works point for point is not incredibly important, as just the general idea of knowing that once you get to a certain point, being, roughly 4,240 defense, once you get there, it's not worth the resources to pile on an insane amount of defense, and you really want to take a look at other options when it comes to survivability and damage reduction, like adding HP, or of course taking a look at other buffs. And this whole thing really adds some perspective on looking at certain things that people probably weren't looking at a lot before, like the strengthen buff, which will give you additional damage reduction that is independent, has nothing to do with this damage reduction. Now, even though the cap for damage reduction from defense is 85%, other methods to reduce your damage have nothing to do with this system. So, things like strengthen might be worth taking a look at once you get to a really, really high defense. And of course, really importantly, we all know that when we take damage, it's not always going to be the same every time. It's not like you're going to take a hit for 3,147 damage, then the next hit is also going to be 3,147 damage. There is a layer of RNG, and Raid Shadow Legends is known for having many layers of RNG, and damage is no exception. And Road was awesome enough, you can see in the bottom third of the post there where it says final damage equals reduced damage times random 0.9 to 1.1. What that means right there in a nutshell is that there is a plus 10% or a minus 10% range simply based on RNG in the actual final amount of damage that you take. And not only did Road provide what this range is, but he also shared a chart here which shows in gray what that range is. And you can see that you've got that plus 10% above the line and then that minus 10% below the line for the actual final amount of damage that you can take based off of your damage reduction from defense, keeping in mind that layer of RNG. So really, really cool that all this information is out there now. Once again, huge shout out to Road for sharing this with the Raid Shadow Legends community. And if you guys do want to take a look at this on your own, of course, once again, I will leave a link in the description of the video, in the comment section pinned at the top. And if you do have questions, please feel free to let me know in the comment section. If I can't answer, I'm sure somebody else will. Or of course, you guys are welcome to join the Discord server and ask as well, or you can also ask me on Twitter. I'll do my best because I know this was a bit more of a complicated video topic, and I really did probably do 10 takes to try to explain this as best as I can, but it's just going to be one of those things. So definitely feel free to let me know if you still have any kind of questions with this stuff. But with that all being said, that is going to be it for the video today. I'm sure there's plenty of other stuff to explore with this, but I want to leave it here before it gets too crazy. So if you did enjoy the video and you want more videos like this in the future, consider subscribing to the channel. Feel free to leave a quick like as well. It means more than you can imagine, so thank you very much to all of you guys who do that. And more Raid Shadow Legends videos, guides, tutorials, all that fun stuff should be popping up on the screen right about now. Feel free to check them out, but if not, until next time, take care everyone. This is Salt of the Salty Guild signing out.